What's up, everybody? It's Reggie Williams, founder and CEO of Ambrosia for Heads. And with me, I have Jake Payne, our editor in chief. And together, this is our What's the Headline podcast. What's happening, man?
Man, what's going on, man? Surviving the nor'easter, the 2022 blizzard that is.
Yeah. You get
You
hit?
Yeah, Philly got it, but I grew up in Pittsburgh. I'm used to snow and all of that. I'm not really afraid to drive in it or walk around in it. So it wasn't so bad, but yeah, definitely heard the sound of shovels all morning. What about you?
Word, I got about a foot, man. I had the snowblower out going, got the sidewalk cleared. So yeah, all good, man. Like a
Damn.
like a snowstorm here and there.
Yeah, everybody wants to be friends with the guy who's got the snowblower. So are
Yeah,
you
right.
you're a popular guy on the block, I bet.
Yeah. No, there's a lot where I am, man. We get a ton of snow up here, so everybody is got their own.
So let me ask you, when the weather like this happens, do you have like a go-to artist, soundtrack, song? Like I mean, we're both wearing hoodies. What's your frigid weather rap?
Well, yesterday I had a drive back. I had about a 2 hour drive back, which turned into 3.5 hours with the snow. It was crazy. But I listened to this playlist on Spotify. It was all of J. Cole's features, every single one he's ever done in chronological order. And it was inspired by one of the best moments that I've experienced in hip hop in the past year. And I don't mean calendar year, because that's easy with January. I mean the past 12 months was on Friday. Benny the Butcher dropped his first single, Johnny P's Caddy, first single from Tana Talk 4, which is coming out. It's going to be his first Def Jam album.
No, this one's still independent through
Okay.
Griselda and Empire. But yeah, I mean, continue though.
Can't wait. I can't wait. And dude, if this is any indication of what to expect from this project, it sounds like it's going to be a contender, strong contender for album of the year. But that song, him and J. Cole just go absolutely berserk. And you had sent it to me, at midnight or so. I missed that. And, I was doing my workout, opened up the iPad on YouTube, and I saw the video and I hit press play immediately. And dude, it was instant add to the playlist. I ran it back like 2 or 3 times. I called you as excited as I've been about a song and as long as I can remember. Because, we do this and we love it, of course, but it's our work. But, there are times where you step back and just fan out. And I had a straight fan out moment. I can't remember being this excited about a song in a long, long time.
Yeah, I mean, there was a ton of great music in 2021, and I'm really proud of the list that we put together, the best albums and the post throughout the year of exciting songs. But this one's different. I mean, this is one of those songs. If you are a fan of lyricism, of competition, of, chippy, bar you over the head rap on a dope beat. I mean, the joint is produced by Alchemist. This is top shelf. This is that Louis Cognac. This is high grade hip hop.
And this is two MCs who I think believe themselves to be at the top of their craft.
Mm-hmm.
And I think both of them took this like, this is going to be a heavyweight match and this is friendly, but this is competitive. And I'm gonna take you to the mat on this. Like, I think they both went at each other in a way that was absolutely insane. Obviously respectful, but like, I don't think either one of them was playing.
Yeah, I mean, and we'll get to that. I think 100% that is true. What's interesting to me is, 3 years ago this month, Revenge of the Dreamers 3 has this public kind of invitation where Cole and the rest of Dreamville invited the best of the best. And a lot of them were, the new class of MCs that you and I spoke about in the last episode, but also there was, Ludacris, K.R.I.T, T.I. And, towards a week or so into those sessions, we learned that Griselda was part of it. And obviously when Revenge of the Dreamers 3 came out, Griselda isn't on it. Conway and JID have put out some joints. We've started to get, some spillover on that. But when I saw Benny was there at the top of 2019, knowing the kind of year he had with Tana Talk 3 and 18, I was super excited. And this was worth the wait. Huge song. And I also think, yes, they are competing, and we will talk about that, but there's an alliance here. These are two guys that have been snubbed by the Grammys and by a lot of mainstream, I think. And these are two guys who are getting their comeuppance. And certainly, you know, in the next few weeks, months, we will see if J. Cole gets Rap Album of the Year at the Grammys. I thought Benny was snubbed. You and I did a whole episode talking about that, you know, when it came to Burden of Proof, which was eligible for the upcoming awards because it dropped in late 2020. These guys are coming out swinging with a message to prove.
Word. And man, oh man, did they. So let's start with the title, Johnny P's Caddy. What's the meaning behind that?
Well, when I first saw it, you know, I mean, Griselda has this way of you know, flashing back to artists they look up to, you know, Ghostface 93, different things like that. At first, I was like, you know, is this a reference to Do or Die, you know, the Chicago group on Rap A Lot, who had an affiliate, Johnny P, who passed away. Come to find out, and the cover work, cover art, you know, takes us there. It's a reference to Benny's father who appears, and it's Benny and his dad side by side across from like an 83 Cadillac, looks like a Seville with custom headlights. And in the press release from our friend Matt, you know, we learned that back in the day, Johnny P, you know, Benny's father, would pick him up and West Side Gun, and they would drive around Buffalo listening to that, you know, the new ish, you know, Nas, Jay, Mobb Deep, Wu, you can only imagine. So it's going back to where that passion was formed with hip hop. And you never hear the title in the chorus. I don't even think the lyrics are ever said. But man, oh man, does it capture that vibe.
And it's a soulful beat. I didn't know until you told me that it was Alchemist, but it's just crafted so well. And the beat, both of them ride the beat so well. Their flows are impeccable. And, you know, I think that's part of what makes it so good. Just like every breath, every like pause, it's just perfectly on beat, man. So, it got me thinking. So J. Cole has been on this run for, I'd say, 3 years now. Obviously, he's been doing features since like, you know, 2010, 2011, whatever it was. But I think around 2018, he went on a mission to like prove that he was the greatest MC. And he took on features with all the best lyricists. It didn't matter if they were commercially popular. He just took on lyricists. So like Royce and Rapsody, and you mentioned K.R.I.T. And I think he just tried to outbar every single person he did a record with in this tour to kind of prove that he was the greatest. And true to form on this, it almost struck me as like an LL Cannabis kind of thing, where he literally went straight at the dude that he was rapping with, respectfully, you know, but basically just declaring that, like, you know, he gets on your record and he's going to be the Grim Reaper. He's going to take out your favorite rapper with his feature. Like, it, you know, it was competitive in a way that I haven't seen in a long time.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder. I don't think he would have done it if there wasn't the highest of respect for Benny. And not for nothing, you know, I was talking with quite a few people about this song. I played it over 20 times since it released. And, you know, I think that Cole, Benny, and Alchemist all brought their A game. And I totally agree with you. This is not what you think of when it comes to an Alchemist beat. But I think what he's also saying is, I only rap with the best. And if you kind of wake the giant, and there's another word he used that we're going to talk about in a second, but like, you better be prepared for what I do to this record. And to me, this is super high level. You know, this is like Control. You know, this is a giant record.
Yeah, I want to just read some of the lyrics just so people hear it. So he said, effortless how I'm skating on his records is proof. I put your favorite rapper neck in a noose, never letting them loose. And then he says, you know, a person want me on a song, he's gonna see the wrath of the reaper. I'm probably gonna go to hell if Jesus asked for a feature. That was, to me, like one of the coldest lines since Nas's Live on the Barbecue. You know, he said he was gonna snuff Jesus, but like he said, if Jesus want me on a, if Jesus asked, I'm probably going to hell if Jesus asked for a feature. He's gonna even kill Jesus on the record, is what Cole is saying, dude. Like, that is one of the craziest lines I've ever heard. And that's just like just a few bars from just a magnificent verse. So first of all,
Reaper though.
yeah. So who had the better verse on this? First of all,
I'm gonna give it to Cole, but I'm not gonna say, you know, we all have that famous line, you know, Nas murdered you on your own ish, or you know, M murdered you on your own ish, that Nas said about about Jay. This is not murder, but I'm gonna give it to Cole. What about you?
I give it to Cole. I give it to Cole, and it made me wonder: is J. Cole the best feature artist in the game right now? Is he undefeated? You know, because he's had so many classic appearances that, you know, I think that to consider him as an MC, you have to bring in the body of work that he's done in these features. And when you do so, I think that's what puts him in the running for GOAT. Like, you know, and listening to all these features, I was like, damn, like people have really slept on this dude. He's so versatile. He's so honest. His pen game is so flawless. You know, I just don't think he gets the proper respect. So I want us to do a deep dive into his features over the years. And one, figure out if he's undefeated, because I think in the last 3 years at least, he might be undefeated.
Mhm.
And I got to say, in listening to that playlist, I think it's like over 40 songs, 48 songs or something like that. There was only one person that I think might have gotten him. And I'm gonna save that for a minute. But I'm curious. I'm curious as to what you think. But so let's set the parameters. First of all, we're only talking features, so records that are not his. I think we should focus on that time from 2018 on, because I think that's when he became very strategic about who he did features with and how he approached those features. I think we should exclude the ones that are Dreamville related, because he's not trying to kill his guys, right? He's just on there trying to support and bring shine. I don't think there's the same level of competitiveness that it is on these other ones. So how do you feel about that as parameters?
Yeah, I think that's a fair place to work. And when you say undefeated, you mean besting the host MC.
Yeah, he got them on their own verse. He got them on their own verse. That's what I mean by undefeated.
Okay.
All right, so let's get into it. I'm gonna pull up this playlist. And shout out to whoever did this. You know, I say Spotify is a great resource in that, you know, if you just type in pretty much anything you want, like, you know, playlists from the 70s, or, you know, Cadillac music or whatever it is, there's a playlist for it. So when I just typed in J. Cole features, this showed up, and let me see, how many songs is it? Um, I can't remember, but I'm gonna start in 2018. There's a period in 2018 where he did Boblo Boat first, and that was the Royce of 5'9" joint. You remember? You want to break down the concept behind that song?
Yeah, I mean, that was a really interesting one. I mean, Royce set the song up as this amusement park outside of Detroit where, you know, he basically lost his virginity. And it's a place where he would go, where a lot of people of his generation would go to escape their normal surroundings, but also it's kind of an ominous record too, because Royce, even if I'm not mistaken, talks about like kind of learning to drink there. And there was this one boat where, you know, two people might go off and be alone and perhaps make moves, which sounds hyper specific to the point where you're like, oh, this other artist, you know, from 10 years after Royce that grew up in North Carolina, how does he make sense in the song? And Cole killed it. And much like Benny, I don't think anyone saw that feature coming. I mean, Royce, you know, has worked with the best of the best, but at that time, you know, it for an independent album, Cole seemed like a hard get, and that song was one of the best joints on that album, which was what, Book of Ryan.
Yeah, and so it was a coming of age story, right? You know, Royce used the Boblo boat as a metaphor for telling his coming of age story. And you touched on, you know, the sexuality part. He talks about like substance abuse. He talks about his relationship with his father. He talks about a lot of things that are deeply personal in an incredibly artful way. And then Cole comes on, has the hook, starts singing, and then it almost sounds, I think he produced the beat too. And then he does a coming of age story of his own too. And they're competitive too. You can tell that each one of them understands the stakes at it, but instead of doing rappy rap, they compete through the concept and who can tell his story more artfully and be more vulnerable and honest. Like, so I think that Cole got Royce on that one, and Royce, as we all know, is a top shelf MC. Like I don't think there's many pen games out there as lethal as Royce's, but I'd say that Cole got him on that one. What do you think about that?
It's really close, that one, to me. But I'm not going to disagree with you, and I'm not playing it safe either. But Royce, I think, doesn't Royce even have 2 verses on that to Cole's 1? It's hard to say, but Cole certainly hangs in there at the highest of levels.
Okay, so after that, he does a feature on J-Rock for OSOM, Out of Sight, Out of Mind, and that's another kind of coming of age story. Like, J-Rock calls himself Johnny McKenzie, goes by the Govey, and really tells a story of, kind of growing up and around gang life and what that was like. And Cole wasn't a part of that life, but definitely, was an observer of a lot of things. So he talks about like his experience with that. That is one where I think, I listened to that one. That one, J-Rock did have 2 verses. And I think that the combination of both verses gave him the edge there. But Cole, once again, I think was almost outshining Rock on his own record. But what do you think about that one?
I don't disagree with anything you just said. And again, I mean, you alluded to it, but it's another place where Cole picks a record that he almost doesn't make sense on, and he finds a way to extract the essence of the song and fit in on it. So often artists think, oh, you got this song that people knee-jerk association with me. And Cole almost makes it hard for himself when he jumps on other people's records and still shines.
So next up was Sojourner with Rapsody, where he absolutely went berserk. You want to break that one down?
Man, that one was insane because Rapsody, this was in between a Grammy nomination run and an album that, you and I both feel was also snubbed at the Grammys, with Eve. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, that was the first look.
Well, this one was, I think the Jamla, it was a Jamla compilation.
We got it there first, right?
Yeah.
And then it reappeared on Eve, and you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
And on this one, I mean, it was so insane because I think you would be hard pressed to find 2 bigger Rapsody fans in the industry than you and I that truly listen to her music. And we mentioned her in the last episode. And Cole came in and just hit that at 1,000 miles an hour, and he just flexes on the record, and it was truly, truly, truly incredible. And that one, I mean, there's a number of elements there of like, 2 of the best from North Carolina. Obviously Ninth Wonder had worked with Cole early, in the mixtape era, and he just smashed that. But anything you want to add to that song?
Yeah, I mean, it's another one where not only was he artful in his rhyme, and he was truly honest about what was going on in his life. It's very autobiographical. So the first lines are: born into pain, alcoholic veins, over analytical brain, a product of the shame, and running from a passage checkered like the game. Somewhere along the way, somebody snatched my peace in Maine. Maybe that's the reason I spent decades seeking fame. And fortune hoping that a proper portion would contain the sadness in my eyes. Remember when I came in this music business, all their questions was insane. Why you never smile on your pictures? I refrain. And now, when you start to connect the dots with Crooked Smile and, him having like the gap in his teeth and being ashamed about that, you just hear like how this dude is just, it's almost like a journal. He's opening up his life and telling it to you in rhyme. And to me, being able to do that, is courageous, but to do it in a rhyme like that is absolutely insane. I think that to me was one of the verses of the year. And I think he got Rapsody, who's one of the coldest in the game too, on her own verse. Like, rap has had people, when they rap with Rapsody, they know that they're going to get embarrassed unless they bring their own game, their A game. And so she gets the best verse out of pretty much everyone that she raps with. You saw that with Kendrick on Power, where he blacked out.
Jay Electronica.
Yeah, Electronica. Yeah. So I think this happened again where Cole, brought his A game. But who you think got that one?
I think it was Cole. I think it was that one time. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So he may be 3 for 3 on that. Another one that I thought was super interesting was Moneybagg Yo. So Moneybagg Yo, people might recall, was on the DMX album too. Are you a fan? Do you listen to his music very much?
Well, you don't even remember, but this particular song, you and I went back and forth over whether or not we were going to cover the site. And this was back in, I think you're saying 2018, and Moneybagg Yo was a name that had never hit Ambrosia for heads. And, I think Moneybagg Yo is one of the better rappers out of Tennessee. I think he has an impeccable ear for beats, but in theory, Moneybagg Yo and J. Cole is not something that you're going to hear in your mind. And when that song popped up, I was astounded. And the name of the song is Say Nah.
Yeah. So, what do you recall about Cole's appearance on that?
Moneybagg Yo is not a lyrical, spiritual miracle rapper by any estimation. And Cole comes in.
Can you say that again?
I said Moneybagg Yo is not a lyrical, spiritual miracle rapper.
Is that out the dome? Like you freestyle that? Like,
you know what? I got that, I think, from our good friend Jonathan Master years ago, and I've always run with it. It's such a great, yeah.
Sorry.
And but because he's for lack of a better, like a trap gangster rapper from Tennessee, and Cole comes in and finds the pocket of the beat right away. It's a different type of beat, and he sprinkles game in there. I don't have bars off of memory. I listened to the song yesterday, and I listened to it again this morning because I wanted to find a place where J. Cole didn't best the host for sure, and he damn sure did it against Yo.
And this was an interesting one because, to your point, we had never had Moneybagg Yo on the site. He's not the type of artist that I think our readers would gravitate toward. Not a super lyrical dude, like you said. Southern slang, but Cole intentionally got on this record because I think that he, in his tour, where he's demonstrating that he is the greatest MC, I think he's very strategic. He wanted to work with all the artists who were top of their kind of subgenre and expose himself to their audience, to let them know, I'm that guy. I'm that guy. It doesn't matter what kind of music you like. I'm gonna always best your rapper, like, and whatever his flow is, I'm gonna take it and be better.
That reminds me so much. And J. Cole and Jay-Z have this big brother relationship, at least early in Cole's career. And Jay did that. When Jay stepped away after the Black Album, remember, he reappears and he immediately does joints with Rick Ross, does joints with Jeezy. Years later, whether Fat Joe, Pusha, Jay finds a movement and stamps that passport. And I think J. Cole did it in the same way, but did it at a time when hip hop was even more diversified.
So along those lines, he then goes to 21 Savage, a song called A Lot, which I think was another one of our contenders for Song of the Year that year. Incredibly soulful beat. The first of now 2 collaborations they have that are both great. He did My Life on the off-season album with him. 21 Savage, another dude who you don't think of as being super lyrical, but when he wants to rap, he can rap. And I think this is one of his better performances too. But Cole just absolutely went berserk. And I want to read some of the lyrics from this too. He starts off attacking dudes, like just straight aggressive mode. He says, how many faking they streams, getting their plays from machines. Like he's talking about the manipulation of Spotify and other playlists, going straight at the industry. He said, I can see behind the smoke and mirrors, dudes ain't really as big as they seem. So you're like, who's he going at? Is he going at Drake? Who's he going at with this? Like, and then he says, I never say anything. Everybody got their thing. Some make millions, others make memes. Like, we know who makes memes, right? Like, that's one of Drake's staples, is when he's gonna attack you, he's gonna use everything, bars, but also memes. So do you think he's going at Drake on this?
I think at the time he was going at 6ix9ine. That was what we deduced, but he sure chooses a murky way. And it's one of those, we'll take it how you feel, shout out to Royce and Mickey Fax, where if you're Drake and you're listening, you could be like, damn, this is about me. Okay.
Yeah. And he said, I'm on a money routine. I don't want smoke. I want cream. I don't want no more comparisons. This is a marathon and I'm aware. I've been playing it back from a lack of promotion. I was never one for the bragging and boasting. I guess I was hoping the music would speak for itself, but the people want everything else. So, he's also very mindful, and this is a constant theme in his music about him not getting the respect that he thinks his peers get, the Kendricks, the Drakes. So again, he's putting, and then he says, okay, no problem. I'll show up on every one album. You know what the outcome will be. I'm batting 1,000. So
Yeah.
he's saying right now, he's validating exactly what we've been talking about, that he is doing this intentionally. He's going on every rapper who thinks he's nice or whose fan base thinks they're the best, and he's showing them that he is going to take their record and destroy them on their own record. It's crazy. Like, so he says he's batting 1,000. You agree?
Yeah, I think he's absolutely batting 1,000. And what's more is Cole, and I've never seen another artist do this. His albums are so thematic, so substantial that he uses these features almost to give himself like a second sport. He's like prime time, where he can just, put substance in there, but be super, pop his collar in a way that never compromises his albums, where he can be, this just supreme MC via a canon of features, which is incredible.
Yeah, he says, it's got to the point that these rappers don't even like rapping with me. Again, he's saying this on another dude's record. Like, the level of disrespect is so like beautiful. You know what I mean? Because it's respect and disrespect at the same time. I guess present company excluded when he's rapping these bars, but it's clear that he's also competing.
Yeah, and I like the way you said that, present company excluded, because it's almost like Cole puts his arm around somebody's shoulder, like, yo, we're good, but just to let you know, this is why the rest of you, nah. Like, and that's such a cool power play too.
Yeah, and so a couple others that he did. He did the London, which was Young Thug and Travis Scott, which is a dope record. I had completely forgotten about that record. Mm-hmm. But next up is Prove It with Big K.R.I.T. So you want to talk about that one a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, that one, I remember at the time us covering. I mean, K.R.I.T and Cole had run in the same circles. They're part of the same class. And, isn't that record, correct me if I'm wrong, it's about follow through on your passion, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And, Cole comes and kind of just dazzles. Again, you might have the bars in front of you or remember a little bit more than I do of that one.
Yeah, I just pulled it up, and again, he's flexing his credentials on K.R.I.T's record. He says, I wrote more songs than a man can count, trying to figure out how to put them out without watering down my brand. I don't want them to not want my jams. Don't want them to become something that nobody want to hear. So he's talking now about his struggle with putting out his records and being concerned that they're not going to be good enough. So again, he's being vulnerable about himself. It's interesting how he alternates between being supremely confident, I'm the nicest dude, I'm going to destroy you on your own record, to talking about, I got insecurities, my teeth, my output. I think it's really interesting that he's able to do both of these things. And when you start to think about some of the greatest out there, the Pacs, the Kendricks, the Andre 3000s, they all kind of share that trait. So the crazy thing is he's talking about his output and whether or not he should put out songs and the insecurities he has around that. But he builds into telling a story about how, his music, ultimately he should put it out because it might help someone. And he tells a story about this super fan who used to come to all his concerts, and eventually he learned that she was touched by one of his songs and he had helped her. And so he goes into telling a story about like the relationship they kind of built over time. He'd see her, at first he thought it was strange, but then he started to get used to it and understood she was a big fan. And he just recently saw something on her social media that she posted about something that terrible that happened to her. And he gives her condolences in the middle of this verse and gives her a shout out. Like, so he uses this guest verse to talk about his own insecurities, translate that into how being vulnerable helps people, and then telling a specific story and doing a shout out. It's like one of the craziest things I've heard in a verse, to like, for a dude to like reach out to a fan that way is insane. But again, being strategic, it's not just about the bars. It's not always just about, thumping his chest and talking about how great he is. It's about how he uses these to advance his narrative as an MC.
Yeah, 100%. And also, staying on topic with whatever the host MC has and uplifting the song. I mean, that absolutely is 100% it. And he's done that not just for new artists, but he did that as well, for OGs. I think of the Gang Starr feature in 2019 where, DJ Premier had to take vocals that Guru had recorded. And I can say this as a huge Gang Starr fan, there was skepticism there. And on the very first single, Family and Loyalty, J. Cole comes in and gives not just the song, but the video his all, and lets people know that this album is going to be on pedigree with the Gang Starr brand. That's a really generous MC who at the same time is a top competitor.
Yeah. And of course, out of respect, he's not going to try and like, talk about how great he is on a record with Guru. But he used it to really celebrate Gang Starr, and he did it justice. He showcased his talent in a way that elevated the record, but didn't try to outshine Guru. So I thought that was really tastefully done. So now we come up to, and we skipped over a few, but of the notable ones, we're now on Johnny P's Caddy with Benny. So you want to talk about Benny's verse first, and I'll pull some quotes from what Cole said.
Yeah, of course. I mean, Benny comes at this, with such vigor. And I'll read my favorite section that he says. He says, "They want to know what I brought to Griselda. I say validity. They asking what work y'all brothers put in. I'm like, what didn't we? Problems that I correct, through the obstacles I progress. Illogical for them to feel responsible for our success. Besides Con and West, tell me, who else I gotta respect? Because I'm kind of perplexed. It's about time that I got my respect." So I know I stumbled a little bit there, but those are compound rhymes that are filled with message. I mean, he's saying like, look, my story, when you talk about Griselda as these D-boys, out of Buffalo that were doing this or doing that, I'm the proof, because Benny's a 3-time felon, which isn't to be celebrated. And I don't think he goes around leading with that, but he spent a lot of his years paying for that validity. He's also saying, who do I have to respect in the game? Because for me, it's this movement that I'm part of. So when you talk about competition in the song, obviously, he extended a spot for Cole to be on this record, but he's saying my team right here, we're the best. And I 100% think the last bar of that excerpt, because I'm kind of perplexed, about time that I got my respect, is 1000% aimed at the mainstream, the Grammy nominating parties, etc. Of like, no, it's my time. And what better way to say so than with this single?
Absolutely. And so Cole then follows up, and I'll read some of his lines. He says, effortless how I'm skating on these records is proof. I put your favorite rapper's neck in a noose, never letting them loose. Cold world, the heart will blast you through your speaker. He the last of the Mohicans, no weaklings in my sneakers. Brothers want me on a song. He gonna see the wrath of the reaper. And I said this already. I'm probably going to hell if Jesus asked for a feature. I mean, wow. And he says, he goes on to say, Eureka, Einstein on the brink of the theory of relativity. Really, no MC equal. Feel me? Like, I mean, wow. Cole Pen be lethal. Crib like an old MTV show. On God, the best rapper alive. Headshot. No, now go ask the best rappers that died. They tell you he never lied. Like, I mean, wow. This dude, like, okay, he's the best ever alive. He's the best alive. And then blow, like, headshot. If you take him out, he's gonna be the best rapper, period. Like, the bars are just crazy. Absolutely crazy.
It's wild too, because you and I spent much of a podcast episode last year talking about his modesty and humility on the Heavens EP, where he kind of asserted himself as one of the greats, but really gives it up to Kendrick and Drake. And there is no modesty to this joint. And I love it because that's going to make for a really exciting year when I anticipate both of those guys, at least Kendrick, are going to be dropping.
So do you think this is his best feature out of all the great work he's done? You think this is the best one so far?
It might be a hot take, but I do. I really do. This is the one. And what makes it, because it can't just be a feature in a vacuum, right? I mean, there have been times, and we'll talk about some of them in history, where you had an elite MC on a song that surprises you, where maybe the bars aren't held up on the other end. But this is my favorite J. Cole collaboration of this kind, and as much as I love Boblo Boat, as much as I love Sojourner, this is the new one for me.
It's hard, man, because he's got a few of the like chest beating verses, the one on a lot. This, I'd say between those two, this probably takes it. But the concepts that he does on Prove It and Sojourner, I think it's hard to. It's almost like apples and oranges. They're both fruit, but it's hard to like to compare and choose one or the other. But it's definitely top three for him. But again, it makes me think, is he the best feature rapper? Who are some of the other feature reapers that we've seen in the past? For me, I think Kendrick is one. He's one of those dudes who's going to get on your record and really try and take you.
Just ask for Sean.
Yeah, Hove too. Like, and Hove, I think we saw it, him and his most aggressive on Kendrick's record. Because I think even back then, it's like 2013 or so, Don't Kill My Vibe, I think he knew what Kendrick represented. And he said, smoking this shit like I'm trying to prove a point. I'm the highest, he went on it. He went in as hard as I've heard him do it, but Ho was done that on. He did it on Drug Dealers Anonymous with Pusha T. Like, I mean, when he goes. Black Thought is another one, but so who are some of the other ones that you think are feature reapers?
I mean, the knee-jerk answer is, Andre 3000, which, he did from the onset with Goody Mob, but there was that run, that 2006, 2007 run where, he did it with like DJ Unk. And that's a case where you take Walk It Out. And Andre, it's one of my favorite verses. And that's a case where Unk isn't going to give you the same energy that Benny gave Cole, but it's a catchy joint. Obviously him and Big Boy, but Three Stacks stole the show on International Players Anthem. He's absolutely one. I think you could absolutely make the case for both Biggie and Tupac. I mean, Biggie on the Craig Mack record from RIP, and there were other joints from like Pudgy and Tracy Lee in the 90s. I mean, Big only had those 3 or 4 years, but what he did is he could make a record and take it out of the water. Tupac did it too in a different way. I mean, Tupac was hopping on records by like Spice One and MC Breed and E40, Above the Law, and just making them crazy. I mean, he would hit it with so much energy and emphasis. But absolutely, you cannot tell me that J. Cole is not in this elite class. And I think you make a great point. Grim Reaper of features, even that list that we just said, I don't know that anyone has the volume and consistency of Jermaine Cole in this time.
Yeah. AZ did it, obviously, like his coming out party to folks. A lot of folks was Life's a Bitch with Nas, and that verse, I thought he got Nas on that. Eminem has done it. But yeah, your point is consistency and length of time and body of work. Dude, I don't know who's done it, done it more. I think Andre is probably right there too. There's another, if you search Andre 3000 features, it's like 16 or so songs, and every single one he just absolutely destroys. It's like he does 1 or 2 a year, and we saw it last year with Life of the Party. I think we both thought that was verse of the year. So I think it's hard for me to say that Cole can outdo Andre, but I think it's close.
It's interesting though, because I mean, you really put me on the game years ago of the value of nostalgia and the value of scarcity in hip hop. And Andre, hasn't put out an album, in over 15 years. So whenever he speaks, there's always going to be that silence and attention. And the difference for me is, and I consider Andre, easily in my top 10 all time, possibly my top 5. The difference with Cole is he's done this at the exact same time that he's put out, since 2018, 2 albums plus, a compilation that he was very much involved with, plus a series of Lucy's, plus some packs. Like, that's crazy to me to be able to do that and not lose a step. And it's interesting though, one other just frame of context, early in J. Cole's career, when I was still as a listener trying to figure him out, he hops on a song with Reflection Eternal, which you could argue is a Black Star record because it's Talib Kweli and Mos Def with Jay Electronica called Just Begun. And that was at a time when Jay Electronica is in the midst of the exhibits, A and C, and Cole hangs in there as a rookie. I mean, he had put out mixtapes before that, but J. Cole, stood toe to toe with all of those guys. And that let me know when he was still in his early 20s, mid 20s, that this guy was going to be something special when it came to these guest appearances.
Yeah. So I told you that I think there was only one time where somebody got him. And like I said, J-Rock might be in there, but the one where I thought that somebody was like outbarred Cole when Cole was on a freestyle, was on a feature, was you got any guesses?
Shout out to Maryland.
To Logic.
Yeah.
Africarian. Logic went berserk on that song. Absolutely berserk. I almost don't count that as a feature. For a lot of folks, we were one of the first to break the story that J. Cole had a hidden track on Logic's album Everybody after his song Africarians, the final song on the album. There's a few seconds break, and then you start to hear J. Cole, and he's just rapping into his phone. Logic had wanted him for a verse, and Cole just did something on his phone, sent it to him for a reference, and Logic was like, yo, this is dope. Can I just use this? And the song is about Logic talking about the conflict he's had being a biracial person, not being accepted fully on either side of the family and just kind of going through that journey. And Cole responds to him as a biracial person himself and gives him game about just loving himself for who he is. And it's really an incredible verse, but that's not the one. For me, it's Drake on Jodeci Freestyle. If you listen to Drake's bars on that, he goes completely off. I think that he got Cole on that one. Cole was great, but Drake's verses were just absolutely crazy on that one. But you recall that song?
Yeah, I do. And I don't disagree with what you said. To me, and I know I still think Royce might be the one place, and that's a different kind of song than Johnny P's Caddy. But that's the one where it might, be really close to call. But even in that list, and there's just one other that I do want to shout out that you put me onto that was recently, it was last year, was the Stress Joint by Young Thug.
Yeah.
And that might have been, as much as Heaven's EP was dope, I think that was as good as most of the verses on Cole's album. I mean, he really splashed that Young Thug joint with an incredible verse about, again, just like his day-to-day circumstances.
He took over the song. It's basically his song. It's on the AFH playlist for people who want to check that out. But, I guess I'll say to close this that we talked a lot about what made his feature special, and it's beyond just the chest thumping. It's also the truth that he speaks in his lyrics. And it's an interesting segue into our next topic, is that truth in lyrics is great artistically, and we like the vulnerability, but recently it's been causing some real legal problems for artists. So you want to break that down?
Yeah, I mean, you have a lot to say on the subject, but Jay-Z, Meek Mill, some of the other artists affiliated with Roc Nation are trying to make it inadmissible, if that is the correct term, that rap lyrics can be used in trials. And this is happening at a time when, throughout the years, we've seen prosecutors use, when an artist gets in trouble for something that I deem is unrelated, they will often use their lyrics to try to accuse them of ill character, and I think that it's happening at a critical time. And we've, over the years, I just was reading about a case Snoop Dogg. You know, they're making the Murder Was the Case miniseries now, him, Snoop, and 50 Cent. And back in 96, when Snoop had Johnny Cochran as part of his legal team, they went into that song, which is really, you know, Goethe, Mephistopheles, like making a deal with the devil. And they tried to accuse him of, of, of speaking about a murder and using it for his own promotion. Which obviously he was eventually acquitted, and Snoop has changed his life, you know, tremendously. But we've seen it time and time again where it can mean life or death for these artists. But I know this is an issue that's incredibly personal to you. Can you shed some additional light?
Yeah, man, it's an interesting topic. For my law school thesis, I wrote a paper that was two parts. It was about First Amendment protection for rap lyrics. You know, at the time in the 80s, there were a lot of heavy metal cases. You know, Ozzy Osbourne and Judas Priest had lyrics that encouraged suicide. Ozzy Osbourne had a song called Suicide Solution. And some kids had killed themselves and were fans of those artists. And the parents sued the artists and the record labels, saying that the lyrics are what influenced their children into killing themselves. And so there were trials, and it was decided that that song lyrics were First Amendment protected against lawsuits, against civil liability. And so those artists could not be sued because they had First Amendment protection, because it was free speech, it was art. And so fast forward to the 90s, there was a state trooper who was, I think his name was Bill Davidson, who was killed by a man who had been listening to Tupac lyrics. I forget the song, but
it was in Texas, right?
Yeah, it was in Texas, and the lyrics were about a person killing a cop.
Soldier Story, right?
Soldier Story. Yep. And the guy was actually listening to it when he was confronted by a police officer, shot the state trooper, and the state trooper died. So I think his wife's name was Linda Davidson, and she sued Tupac, Interscope, and I think Warner Records at the time, claiming that his lyrics influenced this guy and caused him to kill her husband. Now, again, it had already been established in the 80s that music lyrics could not be held accountable for this type of thing. And so I thought it was interesting that they were even making the argument. They were trying, the argument at the time was almost that rap lyrics deserved a lower level of protection than lyrics from other music, which, you know, obviously there's all sorts of racial undertones and, you know, implications around that. Ultimately, it was decided that, again, rap lyrics are just like any other lyrics, and so they get the same benefit of First Amendment protection. And so the lawsuit was dismissed. So fast forward, here we are, the same issue rearing its head. But it's a little bit different, I think, in that in some cases, these guys are actually, it's almost like what 6ix9ine was doing with his own like criminal activity, documenting it on social media, like literally documenting crimes on social media is crazy to me. And, you know, it speaks to what J. Cole was saying in that song a little bit. But some artists are actually truly documenting their crimes on songs. You know, it's always been a tradition. So much of rap is guys talking about, you know, how many people they shot and like how many drugs they sold and stuff like that. But I think we all take it as just, you know, the same thing as if you were watching like a film or something like that. It's entertainment. It's for entertainment value. It's not truth. But it's an interesting thing because rappers also talk about keeping it real and, you know, and being authentic to your music. So where does the line stop and start? You know, so if you are actually talking about your real crimes and providing real details,
Yeah,
I don't know. Maybe that should be something that can be used against you. Like, I don't understand the concept of doing that, you know, but what do you think?
it's crazy, and I wholeheartedly agree with you, because there is a movement right now, and I don't think it's a lot of the artists that AFH or traditional hip hop heads necessarily, you know, look into, but it's starting it's that nucleus is starting to grow, but there's movements out of Chicago, out of Memphis, out of LA, and you mentioned, 6ix9ine out of New York, where people are mentioning real things. And that's a huge way for an unknown artist to get hot. Like, I do a lot of consulting and bio work for a number of artists. And there are artists that have told me like, yo, I talked about the ops, like it got me famous. And whereas that may have been the case with dissing one another, you look at Roxanne Shante and UTFO and you go through history, it's totally different if you're not dissing somebody, but you're saying, I'm the one who did this to your house or did this to you or did this to your man. And I do think hip hop should always do better than that. But you're absolutely right that there's a giant double standard in trying to, do a character profile of somebody based on what they're saying. And that's just not fair, because you could do that very easily for punk rock or for metal or what have you. And I'm glad that Jay-Z, who has been able to kick open so many doors, is hopefully trying to lock a door that there isn't another, artist of note that is denied. Like think what would happen if Tupac, was taken away from hip hop in 91.
Yeah. Yeah. That though was him telling a story, it was clearly fictional. In this case, I do wonder though, like if you had an audio recording of someone and it wasn't a rhyme, and there was no music, but they were confessing a crime, that would certainly be used, admissible in a court. So I don't know, man, this is a tough one. I think the line has been blurred with people talking about real specific crimes on the records.
Absolutely. On the subject of real and on maybe a more positive thing, I just want to take a minute. I imagine that many people that listen to this podcast or check out AFH are just, huge fans of hip hop history and probably have, some of the great books in their library. You and I, on our last episode, spoke about Ego Trip's Book of Rap Lists, which has always been, a text in hip hop that I hold in the highest. And that one, is a book of lists, which is a phenomenal education for people. When it comes to biographies, I recently read one that I consider to be among the best ever. And it's on Jay Dilla. And I want to just give a shout out to, I got my screen, but our man, Dan Charnas, who penned this, and it's called Dilla Time. And, I'm somebody who, I very much, my career was starting out the same year I started was the same year that Fantastic Volume 2 dropped. There you go. And so I wrote about Dilla. I never spoke to him, but I've covered the guys from Slum Village. I've had friends that were down with Dilla that would say, yo, he was a fan of this that you did or whatnot, in terms of covering him and his movements. Never knew the man. This book absolutely blew my mind, because what I realize is there are artists in hip hop that we know a lot about, especially from the 90s, especially artists that have passed on. What Dan Charnas has done in telling the life of James DeWitt Yancey is insane. And it really, really, really made me not just appreciate his story more, but the music. And, I would encourage anyone to order it. I've got the hard copy right here. But I wanted to just share a couple of things that really blew my mind. And I don't want to, these are not huge spoilers. I deliberately chose things that I thought were significant that I've never seen talked about elsewhere. I also want to make note, Dan Charnas, who people may know from the Big Payback, another essential text, has been around hip hop, journalism, television. He's a lecturer and professor, done a number of things. He knew Dilla. Dan, worked very closely with Chino XL, who was one of those artists that often doesn't get spoken about enough that had used Dilla beats. And he worked with a lot of the folks in James' periphery. But what I wanted to share, which was pretty wild, I mean, you're a basketball fan. Did you ever know that for a time in the early 90s, Dilla was represented by John Sally?
No, not at all. That's crazy. That's insane. Yeah.
It's absolutely crazy to me. I mean, it was obviously at a time, not obviously, but it was at a time when John was playing for the Pistons in Detroit. And he partnered with RJ Rice, which is a name that fans know from Dilla. RJ Rice's son is young RJ, who for a time, has been Slum Village's producer, one of the heirs of Dilla's role, but his father has put out a lot of Slum Village records, stuff by Elzai, stuff by T3. And that relationship goes back to the early 90s. And they spoke a lot about how John Sally really had this vision of becoming a music mogul and provided cash and opportunity. And at one point, Slum Village was shopped to all the labels in New York. But do you remember Pendulum?
I have a vague recollection. I can't remember the artist, but I definitely remember the label.
Lords of the Underground was their big one. They also put out Boogie Monsters. But John Sally said, yo, look, I'm in the NBA. I know how to negotiate. And I guess there was a number that was offered to Slum Village to sign them. I mean, this is before, Dilla ever does anything with Tribe or with Skills or with Farside. And Sally goes in to negotiate and doesn't secure the deal. And Pendulum balks. And they ultimately, according to the book, use that same spot for an artist on their label and sign Diggable Planets, which is just mind blowing to me because, one classic group to another. And that's just one example. There's another of, it really speaks to how much Q-Tip advocated for Dilla. And I never realized how complicated their relationship was. I mean, Q-Tip was somebody who, once he got the Slum Village tape in his hand, was astounded with the sound of what Jay was doing with rhythms and time signatures. And when a lot of people in the 90s were trying to get Q-Tip production after he had done, One Love and obviously the stuff with Tribe, Tip would say, yo, take a look at my man right here. And that's ultimately, what landed Dilla's production on Skills' first album, as well as, the Farside second. And there's a story in the book that's mind-blowing of, Dilla going to work with the Farside, and Fat Lip, great MC, 1/4 of the group, edits something in the song, like not a remix, but changed like a snare. And it turns into a fist fight with Trey Hardison of like, yo, you don't do that. Like, this is our man. And anyone that knows the Farside knows that like a lot of groups, they've had their own issues, but it literally turns to a fist fight at the studio over not messing with Dilla's sound. So I don't say that as salaciousness, but these are stories that I've never read about, never seen covered anywhere. And what Dan also does is, Dilla was an imperfect man. For as phenomenal as he is as a musician, and I don't play a note of music, and the book really breaks down how he took production and music theory and really revolutionized it. Dilla hit hip hop with his own rhythm. They also speak about the man we don't know, how he was as a boyfriend, how he was as a father, his relationship with his family. There's just so much stuff here, and it'll give you so much context and perspective. This book is mind-blowingly good. And if you didn't have a copy, I was going to buy you one. But there's definitely some people that I share, a love of hip hop with that'll be receiving this as a gift, because Dan just did the damn thing. Did you start reading it yet?
Yeah, I haven't read it yet. Dan is a friend to me and to AFH, sent me the book. I actually met him at South by Southwest one year. It was the year that he had released The Big Payback. And I told him, very honestly, that it was my favorite book about the music business ever, and one of the best books I've ever read, period. It is incredible and was used. Some people remember the show, VH1 show, The Breaks. It was based in part on that book. But I can't wait to read this. I'm sure, just given the subject matter, it's going to be great. Dan as an author is always incredible. So yeah, I can't wait. And your reviews just got me even more excited.
Well, and what's really cool is I love when a book makes you want to listen to the music. So as I've read this book, I would stop and like, just, you pick these artists, because I say this as somebody who's not from Detroit. I think so often, the Frankendanks, the Fat Cats, the Guilty Simpsons, they can sometimes get lumped together just in a gloss over of hip hop. And this book really takes individual songs and individual accomplishments and breaks it down. As I was listening to that J. Cole features playlist yesterday, I was just revisiting the catalog of Fat Cat, especially the stuff Dilla produced. And I was like, damn, he is and was such an incredible MC, and the music those guys made together. And that's just one example. So yeah, check that out. And on the subject of new music, before even we speak about new records, you made a point about, Tana Talk 4, already sizing up to be one of the albums of the year. And I believe that. I haven't, had a chance to hear anything more than, Johnny P's Caddy. But what we do know is that is entirely produced by Derringer and Alchemist, which, once again is a time of Griselda sticking to their core. The Plugs I Met is an incredible series, but I honestly think Tana Talk is really just as important, if not more. 2018 with the third volume really got things in there. So this one, there's no formal release date, but obviously we know it's coming. We got a big announcement this week. Kanye West dropping a sequel to Donda on February 22nd. We know it's executive produced by Future, which Kanye and Future have made joints together over the past, like I Won for Future. And Ye produced Pain for Pusha T's album, which had Future on it. Any initial thoughts after getting that news?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's cool. Like I like Donda, I respect what it was, but it's definitely not one of my favorite Kanye albums. It's cool. I've listened to it more as time has gone on. I've never been a huge fan of Future. I've tried many times. I like his features when he's singing more than rapping. So the notion of a second version of Donda, which I was just kind of lukewarm on, produced by Future, doesn't really excite me. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, same page. I read a quote that I thought was interesting. Digital Nas, which is a producer that's part of Ye's current team, told Rolling Stone, these are the directives for the album. If it cannot be played at a funeral, childbirth, graduation, a wedding, it will not be on our record. So Kanye is curating around life moments. That excites me, but that could just be a dope soundbite. Much like you, Future has a handful of songs I really like, but when people say that he is, the greatest artist of the 2010s, I have a huge disconnect there. And, Future has been a challenging artist for me as a fan, but we'll see. We will absolutely see. There was a couple albums that are starting to take shape that interest me a bit more.
Wait, let me just before let's talk about two major ones that are coming out though. Let's talk about the Snoop, because you wrote that story that like was huge for us. But then also, I'm not sure if you saw, but I just read that the word is Kendrick Lamar will be releasing a single either on February 4th or February 11th.
Wow.
And so that's going to come just like Snoop's project right before on the heels of the Super Bowl. So halftime performance where they're both going to be featured with Dr. Dre. But that, new music from Kendrick, first of all, if the single's coming, that means the album is probably coming pretty quickly thereafter, because the last time he's released singles, the albums were usually out within 2 weeks of that, and so that to me is gigantic. But the Snoop too, you want to talk about that story?
Yeah, absolutely. So Snoop has very cryptically been posting these things on Instagram. And for anyone that follows, I mean, Snoop has like 20 million followers. He has a very active account, a lot of like pranks and funny stuff on there. But he's been posting these photos that just say BODR. And last week he broke down what that means, is back on death row. And the same day that Snoop hits the stage with Kendrick, with Eminem, with Mary J. Blige, and of course with Dr. Dre, he's going to release this album. And his campaign for it has included some classic photos from the Death Row era, that Vibe magazine cover of him, with the label chain and the black turtleneck was used. And then in the video, he actually goes into kind of a cell block, and in the yard, and he's there with Trey D, maybe some of the other East Siders. But, Snoop has made a lot of thematic albums over the years. The Snoop Lion campaign, when he was about peace, Malice in Wonderland, for a long time, he was talking about Doggy Style too. This will be interesting because, this comes on the heels of Snoop telling GQ that, he really felt as though he should have been considered to run Death Row, in its current state. And I am personally curious if there wasn't a deal after reading that, after, the powers that be seeing conversations like yours and mine on this podcast, where that 100% makes sense for Death Row if a deal hasn't been reached. I mean, Snoop, is always his own artist, but that statement is really curious to me, and I'm predicting something big out of it. And if nothing else, if it's more thematic of Snoop making music with the Dog Pound, making music with Trey D, Lady of Rage, going back in that bag, similar to what Raekwon did with the Purple Tape 2, I'm still here for it, but this one feels more deliberate given the Super Bowl attention.
So you think it's going to be just more than the album title? You actually think it's literal that he's going to be back affiliated with Death Row?
Well, for years now, he's been bringing his chain back, which looks cool, obviously. I mean, he was a part of a dynasty, but now Snoop has been wearing the merchandise. He's been wearing Death Row jackets. He's been wearing Death Row hats. Snoop is somebody that does things. I mean, he sometimes can get lost in the sauce as hip hop's greatest businessmen or just business minds. Snoop doesn't do something unless it really makes him move. And I picture he's got a stake in this. And I think that would be great because one of the things that Death Row has always tried to do, they have vaults, and they want to use those. And I mean, you and I speak a lot about legacy artists, but, I would love to hear some of the stuff that Dre produced that never got out there, some of the stuff that Lady of Rage did, so on and so forth. And Snoop has the ability to get that in the right people's hands in a way when other maybe suits own the company, that wasn't the case.
So I was reading the comments and there were a couple things that kept coming up and I want to get your thoughts on this. So one was that Snoop has now got this creative consultant role at Def Jam. So how does it, given that he has that, how could he be involved with Death Row? That's one question. Second was about ownership of Death Row. And the last I recall is that it's owned by the company that owns Hasbro, the toy company. It's changed hands a few times. I know E1 had it for a while. Are they the current owner or, so that's the other question. Do you think he purchased it or do you think he is, coming in as like a consultant? So, what are your thoughts on those two things?
My imagination, knowing Snoop's business and how much this means to him. I mean, he was the first homegrown star on Death Row. And really, I mean, the only one of that magnitude. Dre had come from NWA, Pac had built his own career. And Snoop is on his own level as compared to the Dog Pound or Rage and stuff like that. I think that Snoop would probably do an equity deal of like, hey, the company that owns it, I think is BlackRock now, which might be a parent company to Hasbro. And I was talking to somebody about that who knows a little bit more of their history. I mean, they come into companies and try to find the value in them. And Death Row has been this asset that continues to change hands. I mean, I don't know about you, but I see a lot of kids wearing the T-shirts and the hoodies and stuff like that. So they make merchandise money and they obviously make some catalog money. Dre got his stuff back. But how can you really make this a profitable asset? And I think one of the smartest things they can do is give Snoop a percentage of the company to do just that. And I imagine Snoop's business is savvy enough where, Def Jam shouldn't care about that. And I reread the GQ article. Snoop is interim. I mean, Def Jam doesn't have a CEO like they did when it was Paul Rosenberg or when it was Jay-Z, president, or even Leor Cohen and Kevin Liles. Def Jam is kind of like, the Las Vegas Raiders. They have an interim coach and they do pretty well. But
they do have a president now. They named president maybe 5 months ago, Tunji from I forget his Tunji.
Oh, Balakun? Yeah.
From RCA. Yeah, it's formerly at RCA. It's like the president of Def Jam now. Yep.
Okay. That's what's up. Wow. He used to rap on Cunning Linguist Records for people that, your real underground hip hop heads. But as Def Jam kind of recalibrates, Snoop is there as an interim. I don't see as an interference there, but I do think it makes sense. And, you're much more business savvy than I am. What about you? Does that seem unreasonable?
No, I think it makes a ton of sense. For all the reasons you stated, like he is, short of Dre and Tupac, he is by far the most iconic artist from Death Row. He's still active, very got a lot of business acumen. He's involved in a lot of different things. He has built himself into a tremendous brand. So, what he could do to re-energize people's, excitement around the the catalog, I think, would be fantastic. And if you put out new stuff, and imagine like a new Death Row compilation with, he's the guy who can get the Dabs and the Corrupts and probably, the Rages, and maybe even get Dre to contribute to it too. I think it'd be incredible. It'd be incredible.
Yeah, and I thought too. I mean, Dre was the co-owner, and he walked away from it. But Dre has no reason to go back to Death Row. It's a dark period of his life, and he really built something incredible with Aftermath. And Snoop, not for nothing. I mean, Snoop has a massive compound in LA. He has his hand in a number of things. But on the record label tip, Doggy Style Records, which Snoop started when he was at Death Row, really was kind of a home for former inmates to release projects. And the East Siders did well, and Doggy's Angels and stuff, but it never really caught on to the level of a Rockefeller or, the like. So this 100% makes sense. And yo, I'm there to see it. I'll be, here's my prediction though. Snoop will be Death Road out when he hits the halftime stage in terms of his attire.
Word, that'd be crazy. That'd be crazy. It'd be even sicker if Dre like bought it and Snoop was being signed by Dre to Death Row. But we'll see. It's gonna be interesting. I think there's gonna be a ton of major announcements coming out of this Super Bowl halftime. They should all definitely drop projects because it's going to be the biggest exposure they've ever had. It's the biggest stage hip hop's ever had. I mean, Super Bowl is watched by over 100 million people just in this country, probably 200, 300 million people around the world. It's gigantic. So can't wait. But what else you got on the new music front?
Yeah, a couple of albums on the radar as 2022 sizes up, the Cool Kids, which isn't, a duo we talk about too often. They have an album coming up called Before Shit Got Weird, March 3rd. This is what grabbed my attention. It features JID, Chance the Rapper, Pac Div, Larry June. The Cool Kids have never gotten their props, in terms of an album for all of the pioneering that they did in the quote unquote blog era. I mean, so much of the style, the slang, the aesthetic that carried into the early 20 teens, these guys, Chuck English and Mikey Rocks were responsible for. So I hope they get some of those props on that one. Cormega has The Realness 2 coming out. It has some heavy hitters. And he recently said Nas is on the album. So for you and I that love Full Circle so much with the Firm reunion, I'm really excited about this. Mega, hit me yesterday. He wanted to play some of the album over the phone. I can't wait to hear it, but be on the look for that. Big K.R.I.T, who we just talked about, has an album done. And that one is coming very soon. It's called Digital Roses Don't Die, February 18th. He already gave fans a little bit of a teaser with a song called So Cool. This one, as I talk about Detroit and Dilla, Cypress Hill has a joint called Back in Black, March 18th. It's produced entirely by Black Milk. We had reported that on the site years ago when this was in the making. But, they've already dropped some singles, but how crazy is that? Be Real and Send Dog with Black Milk.
That's dope, man. I've always been a huge fan of Black Milk, and he's been pretty quiet over the last couple of years, unless I just miss some projects. But I'd say like 2014, 2015, he had a project that was like definitely on my album of the year list. Laugh Now, Cry Later was the song. That was incredible.
Fever.
Yeah. Say again.
It's called Fever, I believe.
Fever, yeah. I can't wait to hear that, because I think for Cypress, they can be hit or miss for me on the beats. But what Black Milk will bring, I think, will be an incredible pairing for them. So can't wait for that one.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I mean, obviously, like Be Real and Muggs, you still see them together on Instagram. I think it's just Be Real and Sendog trying something new, as Muggs has worked with a host of MCs right now. But they did put out a joint called Bye Bye with Dizzy Wright. They're 3 singles down. Check that out. And then just 2 more quick ones. As we talk about Benny Conway's God Don't Make Mistakes is going to be February 25th. That album is the Shady album that we've been talking about. So, the Griselda did their joint with Shady back in 2019. What Would Sheen Gun Do? West Side Gun put his out in 2020. The joint with Slick Rick on it. Son, what was the title? Do you remember?
No, I can't remember.
Yeah.
No, that's dope.
But this this is God Don't Make Mistakes. And, you know, it'll be a huge look for Benny. I think you and I have both had a chance to hear some of the iterations of that. Could be a totally different album, but if it's anything close to what I heard, look out. And then also on the Griselda front, this is interesting to me. Stove God Cooks, you know, one of these MCs that has popped up in recent years through Rock Marciano, through working with Griselda. He's a guest on 2 Chainz album, which drops this week, which is called Dope Don't Sell Itself. That one is through Def Jam. Also on there, Roddy Ricch, Little Baby, Moneybagg Yo, my man Beat King. But I love to see an artist that's coming up through the underground get on the 2 Chainz wave. So be on the look for that.
Yeah, I wonder if 2 Chainz had a conversation with DJ Quick before naming his album that. They don't sell drugs, it sells itself. So
yeah. Very well played.
Well, you know, January is always a slow month. Part of the reason why we have been kind of spotty with our podcast. We only want to do it when there's really stuff worth talking about. But it is heated up in a major way with that Benny J. Cole collab. And sounds like there's a lot of great stuff coming up. So I'm excited.
Most definitely, man. Just over the last week or two, has there been any new music that's really stuck to your ribs?
I mean, the Benny, man, that's it. That's really it. Let me just pull up my, you know, I keep it all in
you put a really dope joint on the playlist that I really like too by King. I hope I'm saying this right. King ISO. He's down with Strange Music. And it's a joint called Self-Destruct with Ritz and Twista. So you got 3 choppers on there. And ISO produced the joint too. His album is called Get Well Soon. And if you like Eminem of recent years, you like Token, you like Joyner Lucas, this album's 100% up your alley.
Yeah, I'll tell you what I've really been listening to, man. This isn't out yet, but we got an advanced copy of Fly Anakin's album. And that album is dope. I think it's
Frank.
Yeah, it's called Frank, and it's coming out in March. But it's one of my favorite projects so far this year, and it's this short year. But it's real soulful. Folks might know him from features with Evidence, but he's got a really distinctive voice and rap style, and you know the production is just super on point. So can't wait to hear that. Can't wait for others to hear that, I should say. Yeah,
exactly. And we have a joint named Sean Price on our playlist, which is great. That one's coming out on Lex Records, which is the same label that gave us Gnarls Barkley and a host of Danger Doom, all that stuff. Just 2 quick others as we part out. Shay Noir, Food for Thought. You know, she's out of Niagara Falls, the kind of greater Buffalo area. And she did a joint with Black Thought a few years ago that absolutely blew my mind. Her album with Apollo Brown made our best of list for 2020. She produced a lot of this album. So you go from working with Apollo to showing, you know, you're flexing on your own. And I've enjoyed that. It features 38 Special, Ransom, and Rome Streets. And also AZ, you know, we had a great podcast with him in 2021, one of our guests. He put out a deluxe edition of Do or Die 2 with 4 new joints on there, 1 with 2 Chainz. And of the 4 new ones, you know, AZ has a great ear for beats. 2 of them are produced by Static Selecta, 1 by Bink, who people know through Jay-Z's Blueprint. And 1, as we talk about Death Row, is produced by Butta, which is from my hometown of Pittsburgh. And he did some crazy joints with Dre and Razkaz and West Side Connection. And he did a joint in there called Stay Fly, which is kind of an homage to Run DMC, which I quite enjoy.
Oh, dope. And Makami dropped a new project too called Dollar Menu. Haven't listened to that yet. It's short, only 7 songs. He's got his 7th song is called Nardwar. So that's going to be interesting. It's only 21 minutes, so definitely going to check that out. Have you heard it yet?
Yeah, I have. And from that same camp, the God Fahim and Euro Droog dropped a Wolf of Wall Street 2, which I played. Another like 7 songs, real short, easy listening. The Mock is dope, man. I mean, we talk about consistency. That is his 3rd project in less than a year by my count. There might even be a 4th. But yeah, January, you know, different kind of month, but I think the gods gave us more than usual this month.
Word. All right. So that being said, what's your song of the week?
And I think we got the same one, Johnny P's Caddy.
Yeah, no question, man. No question. Yeah. So always a pleasure. Likewise. And until the next time.
Absolutely. And hey, last thing, if you're listening, please give us a rating on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, every little bit helps. We want to spread the word and share the gospel. So thank you all.
Word. Peace.